How do you acknowledge an opposing viewpoint in your writing? In this lesson, you will learn how to acknowledge opposing viewpoints by conceding a weakness in your argument. Let's review a moment. Persuasive writing is a type of writing where the author states his or her opinion about a topic and then proves that opinion true using evidence. The ultimate goal of persuasive writing is to get the reader to agree with whatever it is the author is arguing. So for instance, if the author is arguing that all teenagers should have an after-school job because it teaches them responsibility, then by the time the reader is done reading that essay, he should also believe that all teenagers should have an after-school job because it teaches responsibility. When you look at an essay, there's two main parts. There's the thesis statement, which is where the author actually states his or her opinion in the first place, and then also outlines how they're going to support it. And then in the body paragraphs, which are these parts right here, this is where the author actually dives into supporting the thesis statement. And when we're talking about the concessions, that's actually happening here in the body paragraphs. So how do we actually concede an argument or acknowledge the opposing viewpoint? Well, the first thing you should do is you should consider weaknesses in your argument. Then, you should use a concession transition and add that weakness after your elaboration. Finally, you should explain how your argument is still valid despite this weakness. So let's look at an example. We have a paragraph that we've been working on. So it's one reason cell phones shouldn't be allowed is that they disrupt classes. For instance, cell phones often ring in the middle of lessons. If a student forgets to turn his cell phone off, there's a good chance it will ring at some point during class. This can cause a problem because the noise will interrupt the flow of the lesson. By the time the cell phone is off and the students are ready to learn again, the teacher will have to review some of the material he has already covered. So you think about this, right? And you're trying to argue that they should be banned completely. And they should be banned completely because they're disruptive. A good writer always acknowledges the other viewpoint, as in like, what could be a weakness in this argument? So I'm going to think about that. What could make this argument weak? Well, if you think about it, I'm arguing for banning cell phones completely. And in reality, cell phones ringing in the middle of class, there are possibly other ways we could solve this problem rather than just saying no student is allowed a cell phone. So I'm going to use a concession transition such as granted, and I'm going to write that in there. Granted, there are ways to solve this problem without banning cell phones completely. But now the last step is to actually think about, okay, that is a true statement. You can find ways to solve this problem, but for some reason my solution, which is banning them, is still a stronger idea. So I have to ask myself, why is my argument still valid? And the reason is that when one considers like the amount of time and the number of other problems that come up with cell phone use, in addition to them disrupting classes and the other things that are being addressed in this essay, such as bullying and cheating, then the fact that there's all these other problems, it just makes more sense for students to keep them at home. So the way that you write a concession and do it effectively is to first consider weaknesses in your argument. Then you're going to choose one and you're going to use a concession transition and add that weakness after the elaboration. Finally, you're going to explain how your argument is still valid despite this weakness. In this lesson, you have learned how to acknowledge other viewpoints by conceding a weakness in your argument.